All right, today we are cracking open the secret recipe that powers, well, pretty much all life on Earth. It's a process that's happening all around us, in every single leaf. And honestly, it's kind of magic.
No, but seriously, think about it for a second. Where does all that stuff, the trunk, the branches, all those leaves, where does it all come from? How can something so huge just spring out of a tiny little seed?
You know, the first thing you might think is that the tree is just sucking up its food from the ground, right? Like it's eating the soil. But that's a huge misconception. If that were true, there'd be a giant crater around every big tree. The truth is, plants don't eat food, they make their own.
And the real story is so much cooler. A plant literally builds itself, using sunlight for energy, water from the ground, and carbon dioxide straight out of the air. It's like the ultimate DIY project, using the simplest materials imaginable.
And this isn't just some neat trick plants can do. This one process is the foundation of basically every food chain, and oh yeah, it also produces the oxygen we're all breathing right now. So yeah, you could say it's the most important recipe in the world.
Okay, so let's get into it. What's in this secret recipe? We're going to break it down into 3 simple parts: the ingredients, the power source, and what you get at the end.
And that recipe has a name you've probably heard before: photosynthesis. It's how plants make their own food. They don't have to go hunting or head to the grocery store. No, they're their own little personal chefs, running a tiny kitchen inside every single leaf.
So here's how it works, in 3 easy steps. First, the plant gathers its ingredients. It pulls in water from the soil and grabs carbon dioxide from the air. Step 2, it adds the energy. Sunlight is captured by this green stuff called chlorophyll. And step 3, the result. You get sugar, which is the plant's food, and you get a byproduct that's pretty important for us: oxygen.
So how do we actually test this recipe? We could try to set something up in a real lab, but honestly, that can get messy and complicated. So instead, we're going to step inside a virtual lab to get a perfectly clear picture of what's going on. See, in a real lab, the light might flicker, the temperature can change, and every single plant is a little bit different. But in our virtual lab, we have perfect control. We can change just one thing at a time and get super precise, repeatable data. It's the perfect way to figure out what really makes this recipe tick.
So how are we going to know if it's working? It's actually pretty simple. Remember that oxygen byproduct? Well, when the plant releases it underwater, we can see tiny little bubbles. All we have to do is count the number of bubbles per minute, and that tells us exactly how fast photosynthesis is happening. More bubbles, faster rate. Easy.
All right, experiment number 1. We're going to start with one of the key parts of the recipe: the energy source, light. We'll keep everything else exactly the same and just play around with the light's intensity.
So what do you think will happen? I mean, the logical guess is more light means more energy, which should mean more photosynthesis. And more bubbles, right? Let's fire up the simulation and see what the data shows us.
And yep, just like we thought, as we crank up the light from 1 unit to 2, then to 3, the bubble count goes up, the plant is working faster and faster, pumping out more food and more oxygen. So far, so good.
But then, something weird happens. We keep turning up the light, but the rate of photosynthesis just stops increasing. It hits a wall, a ceiling. So why would adding more energy suddenly not do anything? Let's look at the numbers. The bubble count climbs nicely until we hit 4 units of light. We get 18 bubbles per minute. But then look, at 5 units, it's still 18. At 6 units, still 18. It's completely plateaued. There must be a bottleneck somewhere else in the system.
Okay, on to experiment number 2. Let's see if we can figure this out. This time, we're going to keep the light steady, and instead, we'll change the amount of our other key ingredient: carbon dioxide.
So, let's ask the same kind of question here. Carbon dioxide is a crucial ingredient, so if we add more of it, will the recipe always get faster? Let's run the numbers in our virtual lab and find out. And, would you look at that? It's the exact same pattern. The rate speeds up as we add more CO2, but only until we hit a concentration of about 0.15%. After that point, adding more CO2 does absolutely nothing. The rate just flatlines at 17 bubbles per minute. Something else is holding it back.
You see what's happening? These 2 experiments, they've both pointed us to the same hidden rule that's controlling this whole process. And that rule is a really important scientific concept.
And that concept is called a limiting factor. What it means is that any process that needs multiple ingredients can only go as fast as its most scarce resource.
You can have all the light in the world, but if you've run out of carbon dioxide, the process just stops getting faster. The best way to think about it is like an assembly line, right? Let's say the person putting on the wheels can only do 10 cars an hour. Well, it doesn't matter if the painting station can do 100 cars an hour. The whole line is limited by its slowest part. In our experiments, once we had plenty of light, carbon dioxide became the limiting factor. And when we had plenty of CO2, light was the limiting factor.
So, let's just recap what we found in our little investigation. We saw that photosynthesis is this amazing recipe plants use to make food from light and air. We proved that you can speed it up by adding more ingredients, sure, but only up to a certain point. Because in the end, the speed is always controlled by whatever ingredient is in shortest supply. That's the limiting factor.
And that leaves us with one last big thought. This incredible process, with this delicate balance of limiting factors, is what created the very air we breathe and what keeps our world running. It's a powerful reminder that even the biggest systems, from a single tree to the entire planet, are governed by their smallest, most essential ingredients. So the question becomes, what happens if we start messing with that recipe?